Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of All in All with Alex. I'm your host, of course, Alex. Today we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Joshua Peters. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, Alex. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for being here. Can you give the people just a little bit of background about yourself before we dive into the question?
Yeah. So, you know how when you know what you're supposed to do and you know how to do the thing, but you just don't do the thing, right? That's what I help people to do. I help them go from doubt to confidence or worries to creative power, really get out of their own way. And I do that through hypnotic coaching. I'm a hypnotic coach.
Okay, good, good. Well, we got some interesting questions today, then. All right, so let's just dive straight into it. So, what do you feel like was the pivotal moment that led you to hypnosis and coaching as a career?
Hmm. It's a great question. So I spent about 10 years of my life working to get unstuck. And I had been kind of living life just floating around, letting things happen. So making choices without making choices, and ended up in a poor marriage and a job that wasn't serving me, town that I didn't want to live in. Like everything kind of came to a head where I just realized I need to start actually make some choices here. And so I started doing that and shifting my life around. It was kind of tough because I would make a choice and then I would figure it out. So it took me about 10 years of kind of doing this, of getting a new job, quitting smoking, getting divorced, becoming part of the community, like really just leaning into where I was. And I got to this place where I had done everything that I could in the town I was in, and I wanted to move to. I live here in the Minneapolis St. Paul area in Minnesota, and I wanted to move here. My kids, I had 5 kids at the time. I mean, I have 5 kids. They were still in high school, and they didn't want to move with me. At the time, my ex and I were sharing custody, 50-50. It was pretty important to me to be a dad and to show up for them, and that was really challenging to know that this was the right thing to do, but also how am I going to still be a good dad and do all this? I ran across a hypnotist, and she helped me really reframe how I was thinking about this and to realize I can just set my life up however I want to. Like I don't have to follow these certain rules. There's not certain ways that I have to be. And so I did, and I made that work. And that just really got me thinking because at the time I was working in corporate, I wanted to get out of corporate. And when I thought about it, I realized if I could help other people move through their own kind of stuck areas faster than the 10 plus years it took me to do that, and I could make a living doing that, I couldn't think of any more empowering way really to live my life. So I found a hypnotist. I mentored with him for about a year and a half or so, started seeing clients. And after about another year, I was able to go full time. And I've been full time since fall of 2018.
So, how does the power of the mind influence the success or failure of entrepreneurs?
Yeah, to me, the mind is where it all starts. And it's pretty true. To lift my hand up, I have to first imagine that I'm lifting my hand up, and then my hand follows along. Like that's an example, right? The mind is in control of everything here. What happens for a lot of people is we get stuck in different patterns. These are patterns of thought, patterns of behavior, even patterns of belief that usually get created when we're pretty young. And then we kind of act as if these things that a 4-year-old made up about themselves is true, and we start to live our life that way. So to answer your question around an entrepreneur who again knows what to do, knows how to do it, and when it's time to put themselves out there, they get anxious, they avoid doing that thing, they procrastinate at doing it, or they wait until they're perfect at whatever it is that they're doing, which means they're never going to do it. So it kind of stops them from being risky, trying things, failing, learning from failure, growing, like, the growth mindset, that ability to learn from your mistakes and get better by doing so. So that would be how I would imagine it. Like, your mind gets in your own way when you're allowing the unconscious habits, beliefs, and behaviors essentially to run things for you.
Okay. So how would you define inner strength, and why is it so important for personal transformation?
To me, inner strength is, I think of it like resilience. And so what that means is you're able to handle whatever comes your way. You might not have a plan for everything right now. Like, that's kind of going through all the what ifs, and that's a thing that happens for people too, is they get stuck in having to figure out all the things that might go wrong. But inner strength is the ability to handle whatever situation comes your way in the moment and deal with it.
Yeah, I like that. So can you share a success story that the first one that just kind of comes to your mind that you remember, of where you helped someone overcome, crippling anxiety or fear, through
Yeah.
hypnosis?
Yeah, a good example that I can think of is a client of mine who has become a friend now, Katie. And Katie is a business owner, entrepreneur, a musician, a singer,
Okay.
runs interesting business. So at the time, this was pre-COVID. Or right kind of at the beginning of COVID, she ran a teaching school for kids to teach them how to sing, to teach them different instruments. And at the same time, she has a wedding band. And the wedding band is really a bunch of different people that can come together and play music. But there's so many people that she could actually have 3 different bands at the same time. It's always the same band. They're always playing the same music, but it's just a different group of people. So kind of like a business. Like, you need a band, she's got the people, she'll get it there for your wedding.
Hmm.
So those were kind of the 2 businesses that she was running. And for her, she reached out because she had been feeling super anxious. In fact, she had gotten in a fight at a bar, which is not what she normally does, because she just snapped at somebody. What would happen every time she tried to delegate to somebody, she didn't think that they could do a good enough job, so she'd take it on herself. She was essentially doing all of the work for both of these businesses and burning herself out. And at the same time, she had to do social media posts and had to do different kinds of marketing, and she's the face of the company. That meant that she had to put herself out there. She didn't do it because she didn't feel right about putting herself out there. There was something that was causing her anxiety around that. So we worked together for a period of time, probably about 3 months or so, and did some, a whole bunch of, there's a lot of different things that you do. I usually teach people different tools, neuroscience-based tools that they can use themselves. We kind of get at what's the root of this, what's kind of going on here, what are the programs that are running, and we shift those around and then help her step into who she's becoming. So does she want to be, and what's that person like? That's kind of the process that we use, but we did that over about 3 months, and things shifted around 100% for her. I just talked with her the other day. She shut down the teaching business. She still does the wedding band business, but what she started doing is she actually reached out locally here to all of the best musicians that she could think of to start a band. And she told me when she was doing this, she thought, "Oh, I'm just going to reach out to these people. They're going to ignore me." But everyone was excited. They know how talented she is, they know how connected she is, and so they formed this band. It's a 70s style band, 70s kind of format band. And then she started putting herself out there and the band out there. She ended up, just because she wanted to, she's like, "Well, I would really like to do an album. And I'd like to record it at one of those places where all of my favorite bands from the 70s recorded." So she figured out where that was, and she reached out to the studio owner, same guy who ran the studio back in the 70s, and he loved her project. He loved her idea. He invited him down. It's like, great. So then she was looking for a producer for her band, for her album, and thought, well, I'm going to just reach out to that guy that produced all those albums from the 70s that I really like, well, he's probably going to ignore me, but she reached out to him. He loved the project, signed her up. And this kept happening for her. Every time she thinks she's overstepping her reach, she just reaches out, she just tries it, and things are rolling. So they've just released their album. They're really crushing it as a band, and she's really passionate now about putting herself out there. So that's kind of an example of how at first she was so shut down that she couldn't even go on social media, and now she's running the social media of the band. She's putting herself out there all the time. She's sharing the challenges and the mistakes that they make and making it part of their whole story.
So, what would you say is the most common misconception that people have about hypnosis?
There's a few of them. One of them is that I'm going to take over their mind and they're going to tell me their deepest, darkest secrets. What's interesting about hypnosis is it isn't about taking over anyone else's mind. I think of it more like a trance state. It's a state of consciousness where you have access to these different inner abilities that you don't normally have access to. And then you can make different changes within your own psyche. But the neuroscience behind this is very simple. These patterns that I told you about, the beliefs, the habits, or behaviors, they're literal pathways in the brain, neurons connected to neurons. As the brain uses a pathway, it gets stronger. And if it doesn't use a pathway, it gets weaker. That's neuroplasticity. I'm sure you or your listeners have heard this term before. Over time, the brain also doesn't care, does this behavior help me or not? All it cares about is the pathway getting used? So if it's getting used, it's going to strengthen that. So that pathway gets stronger and it becomes the path of least resistance. What we do with hypnosis, with really any kind of change work that is effective, is we light up the pathway, usually by talking about the problem, and then we use these hypnotic techniques to send those neurons down a new pathway, usually like a pathway of calm, of confidence, of presence, or peace of mind, or something like that. So people think I'm going to take over their mind. Actually, your mind is already taken over by your problem. So let's let you get in control of your own life. And that's really what this is about, is helping you take back control.
Okay, so you are somewhat steering the negative to a new place in the brain, to where it's
Absolutely.
less worried about.
What started out as a problem can actually become the solution.
So, what do you feel is the connection between self-confidence and the ability to take risk in life?
Yeah. So taking risk, you have to at least have some belief that you're going to figure it out, right? And that's kind of what confidence is. It is now confidence can be different for everyone. It's going to feel a little different for everyone. But for most people, it's you're kind of relaxed, there's a little bit of excitement, there's some energy, and you put yourself out there.
Mm-hmm.
When you feel confident in your own ability, it's a lot easier to take a risk because you know you'll be resilient. Again, coming back to resilience, you know you'll be able to deal with the situation. Where when you're a person who doesn't have confidence, so you kind of struggle with confidence, a lot of times you start to ruminate, or you'll go down these spirals in the mind. You get stuck in the head around what might happen, what people might think of you, blah blah blah, like all the kind of BS stuff that's really not true, but we get caught in that cycle. And when you're caught in that cycle and you're in your head, you're not present. It's a lot more challenging to be confident and to take a risk if you're stuck in your head thinking about all the problems that might not happen, and worries and judgments and all the stuff. Where if you're present with with just what is, with where you are right now, then you can make choices.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with that. So, um, let's switch to your podcast. So how does your weekly podcast, Super States, help listeners access higher levels of success?
In the podcast, I interview lots of different types of practitioners who use altered states in different ways. I talk to uh, people that are experts in sexuality or in psychedelics. sometimes shamans, energy workers, other hypnotists, psychologists. Like I talk to all kinds of people that are using this technology of trance to help people either heal or shift or change their life in some way. And then I also do some solo episodes where I will walk people through a process or do a mini hypnosis session as well. So, how people can use that to get better is learning these. Most of the people have some kind of thing that they teach. So, you're learning these different techniques. You're also learning about other kinds of practitioners that are out there that could be, or even ideas that are out there that might benefit you. Or if you already know about it, you're getting a little bit more deeper information. So it's really just to help people open their mind, find these different possibilities that are out there, and then hopefully step into them.
And then I can only imagine, you probably learn a thing or two on there as well.
I love it. I get to learn something every time. Yeah.
That's right. So how can someone differentiate between genuine fear and self doubt versus actual risk?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think of what makes me think about this is almost everything that we are afraid of is in our head. It's not real fear. Real fear is you're walking in a dark alley and there's a guy with a knife. Like
Yeah.
that's real fear. That's something to be you need to physically be afraid of. So I think that might be the way to differentiate this. Are you in physical danger or not? And if you're not in physical danger, it's probably not a real fear. It's in your mind kind of a fear. So just ask yourself that. Am I in physical danger? And if so, then take care of that. But if not, there's lots of different techniques. I share a bunch on my podcast or on my YouTube channel that teach you how to shift your state, to calm your mind. Use one of those things to calm your mind so that you can get back to present, back to calm, back to your peace of mind again, so you can confidently choose how to respond in any kind of situation instead of just the automatic. Often that fear reaction, it's just an automatic thing. You don't really think about it. You just fall into it.
So what do you feel would be someone's first step that they can take if they want to break free from their fears and self limiting beliefs?
First step that someone can take. Well, the first thing to do is to understand that there is a limiting belief. Like there's something that's going on within you that's causing it. Really so awareness is first step. Like where notice what you're feeling. Because these things become so ingrained and automatic, we just let it happen. We just think, "Oh, well, this is just who I am. I guess I'm just an anxious person. I guess I'm just a fearful person." Well, that's not actually true. You're probably just reacting in a pattern that you learned since you were a little kid as a way to essentially to stay safe. But you're holding yourself back from lots of things. So notice where what's going on there. Start to become aware of that so then you can start to decide how you'd like to be different.
So do you have any anything that you can share as far as daily practices that people can do to build mental toughness and mental.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I always meditation is a great tool. And one thing that I see a lot of people, and we often talk about meditation, and many people have the same fear around meditation, and that's that they can't meditate. They tell me, I've tried it, my mind doesn't shut off. And meditation isn't actually about shutting off your mind. You can get there, but it's not the reason that you might meditate. When you just sit, again, we're talking about being present. When you just sit and you're present with your breath or with your posture or with the sounds around you, and you just sit for 5 minutes, you're building a larger capacity within you. You're building an ability to deal with more kinds of situations that come up, because when you can be present with that, you're learning that ability to be present, so that when you're in a chaotic situation or something that's truly dangerous, you can also be present. So it's about building that capacity. That's that's probably one of the biggest things that you could do. And a simple meditation, simple way to do that is just to sit and focus on your breath. There's a type of breathing called connected breath, which is breathing in and then breathing out. You don't hold it at the top, you don't hold it at the bottom. And you do a count of about 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. That's going to give you around 6 breaths a minute. 6 breaths a minute is the ideal rate for the human body to be in respiration. It puts us into our ideal state of so sitting 5 minutes a day, focusing on that connected breath, just a slow and steady 5 second in, 5 second out, no hold at the top, no hold at the bottom. If you did that, you're going to start to get into what's called resonance, to get into your that natural human body's most powerful state. So that would be a great way to start to build that resilience for yourself.
Yeah, I do something similar to that when I when I arrive at work and when I get ready to leave work. I
Mhm.
just sit in my car for a minute and just relax, and you got to decompress sometimes and just
It's a great way to kind of place a marker, right? You had work time, and now you're going back to personal time. But that moment of the breath, that moment of coming to center, is your way of making that transition. And sometimes transitions are really important for people.
yes, for sure. Especially when you deal with a lot at work, and then you have to go home. You got to separate the two because if not, one of them will suffer.
Yeah, and you don't need to be throwing your work stuff on your home life.
For sure, for sure. So what role? I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, but what overall role does visualization play in overcoming fears and achieving success?
I'm going to talk a little. So I'm going to answer this in a little roundabout sort of way, and the reason is the word visualization is an interesting one. It's used a lot, and there's a reason. Like most people are very visual. How we experience the world is typically through our eyes, and when we're talking about visualization, we're talking about imagining pictures, right? Pictures are kind of movies in our mind, which is important, and the brain doesn't really know the difference between imagining something or having it actually happen. Remember those pathways in the brain, the pathways are getting lit up either way. Like if I pretend to throw a ball or I actually throw a ball, in the brain, the same stuff is getting lit up. But I'm going to come back a little bit around visualization because I would I would actually say imagine. In fact, when I'm talking to clients, I will never tell them to visualize something. I tell them to imagine something. And the reason that I do that is everyone's imagination works a little differently. Like I said, many people are visual focused. So they do imagine in pictures and in images, but not everyone is. Some people are much more kinesthetically focused. So they tune into how they feel more so than what they see in their mind. Sometimes people are more audio focused, so they hear sounds or hear words or descriptions or music or something like that. So there's lots of different ways that people can engage in their imagination. And the reason that you might want to engage in your imagination is exactly what I just described. When you engage your imagination, that lights up these pathways in your brain, so that when you're in a situation where you need to have that new pathway, it's already been created. Like for example, if you there's been studies where they've had people. They did a study where they had piano players. I think they had three. Yeah, they had three groups of piano players. One group was the well, what do you call that? The control group. They didn't do any practicing or anything. They just didn't do anything. The second group practiced their piano every day for an hour. I don't remember the exact time. Let's say an hour. The
Uh-huh.
third group, they didn't practice they physically, but they imagined it. They played it out in their mind. They basically practiced in their mind. Which group do you think did the best?
Well,
Who improved the most after the end of the
well, my answer, just because I've been dealing with music, would be the
yeah,
one that imagined, but
yeah.
The normal person's answer would be the ones that practice every day for an hour.
You would think so, wouldn't you? Well, the ones who didn't do anything, they didn't increase their skill at all. The ones who imagined it actually increased their skill more so, not by a lot, but by enough to make that like noticeable. They actually increase more so than the people who sit there and practice physically. So it's really interesting how this works. We're literally lighting up parts of our brain, the same parts of our brain that are getting used when we're physically doing something, and we're getting better at things just by using our imagination. That's how you can use your imagination to. Wait, what was your initial question? How do you use it to get past a fear?
Yeah, and overcoming fears, or achieving success.
Okay, well, so that's so we just talked about how you can do it to achieve success by imagining yourself doing something successful, which is also the same way that you can move past a fear. So let's say I have a fear of driving on the highway. Typically, if I ever think about driving on the highway, I imagine myself having a panic attack and getting afraid. Well, of course, that's going to make it harder. Like you're already building up the thing you don't want. So how you can use this to move past that is you imagine yourself driving on the highway, but feeling calm, present, relaxed, at peace, noticing that feeling in your body, that kind of loose, just heavy feeling as you just drive along with the music playing, enjoying the moment. And you imagine that again and again. And pretty soon that's building up a new pathway. Now, when you're like driving on the road again, that new pathway just takes over. That's where you go. That's where it's taking you. And there is no fear at that moment.
So how are you able to help clients who are stuck in analysis paralysis or perfectionism?
Yeah. So perfectionism and analysis paralysis, they're very, very similar. Really what they're about is if I can't do this perfectly, or if I don't know the exact right answer, then I'm just gonna keep spinning on this. I'm not gonna try the thing. So for perfectionism, it's you usually end up procrastinating, doing things last minute, and then you're not doing them the way that you'd want to anyway. Analysis paralysis, you just get stuck in all of the choices and you're not able to come to a decision. So maybe you're not trusting yourself, you're not trusting that you know enough information. Using these different hypnotic techniques, like for example, for perfectionism, you're never going to be perfect. And so typically there's anxiety tied to that. There's these old patterns that are tied to that. Will you use whatever kind of hypnotic technique needs to happen in that moment, kind of based on the person in front of me, to again light up the pathway, send the neurons down a new pathway until this new pathway becomes the one you want, where you're trying something. You're learning from what you do and getting better at it. That's the definition of growth, rather than avoiding it because you're not going to be perfect. Or you make a decision knowing that you can always shift it and change it. It doesn't have to be the perfect decision from the get-go because you can always adjust. So sometimes it's a mindset change.
Well, just one quick thing. Analysis paralysis, that's just kind of weird to say.
Yeah, for sure.
Analysis paralysis. But anyway, yeah. So basically, with analysis paralysis, you kind of always looking at the options and not able to decide. Like you're like, what about this one? What about that one? You know what I mean? Like you're just stuck in looking at the choices all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, tough to be decisive when you can't make a decision.
Sure. Let's see. So, why is it crucial to focus on the present moment when working through anxiety or fear?
Because fear and anxiety is in either the past or the future. The present moment is what's happening right now. Typically, if we're feeling anxious about a situation, we're imagining things that are going to happen in the future or things that might happen. So we're not present. Or we might be imagining things that have happened in the past and worrying that they might happen again. Again, you're not in the present. So when you're in the present, you're with what is right now. What is happening right now? And that's where you get solid and centered. You can make choices when you know where you are now, where if you're stuck again in those loops, you're just reacting. And if you get stuck in fight or flight, that fear response, You have hormones flowing through you, different chemicals are are flowing through you. You're not making rational choices. You're responding to the body trying to get ready to fight something that's not there.
So, can you explain the difference between temporary relief and lasting transformation when it comes to overcoming fear?
Yeah, well, what comes to my mind is like a medication. Like you can take a medication that's going to shut down that part of your brain that is responsible for the anxiety or maybe the fear so that you can do the thing. But underneath, the same program is still running. In the brain, the same pathways getting lit up, just the medication isn't letting you feel it. That's temporary relief. Getting at why this program is here in the first place and healing whatever needs to be healed so that that can just go away, that's lasting transformation. That's where we're changing, we're literally changing the way our brain is firing in a moment and can now make new choices.
I like that. I like how you explain that. What role does self compassion play in building confidence and inner strength?
Yeah, well, if you're constantly putting yourself down, that's not a very good way to feel confident in yourself, or you're not going to have a lot of inner strength if you feel like there's something wrong with you. So self-compassion is knowing, yes, maybe I made a mistake, and that's how I learn from things. That's how I grow. That's how all of us grow. So self-compassion for ourselves and for others is vital to be able to take a risk, to learn from things, to try new things, putting yourself out there, because things aren't going to be perfect, and that's okay.
So, what's the relationship between setting goals and managing the emotional roller coaster that comes with them?
Well, setting goals is really easy. You just write them down.
Mhm.
It's the taking the action again that can be the challenge. And for all those reasons that we talked about, like setting those goals is knowing the thing to do and knowing how to do it. Most likely, like, you set a goal, you break it down into smaller goals, you break it down into smaller steps. Now you have a plan to go from A to Z. Now you have to do the plan. Managing the emotions is when, okay, it's time to put that post out into the world. And then your mind is, what are people going to think of? What are people going to think of me? Am I actually good enough for this? What if they find out I'm not really, I'm an imposter here? What if they don't want my thing? Or what if they do want my thing, but they think I'm an idiot? All that stuff starts to go off in your mind. So that's what the emotional management is about, is recognizing, oh, I'm stuck in my head again. Let me do one of those processes, one of those techniques to shift that state, to take yourself out of that fight or flight. Because when you're in the what ifs, that's a fight or flight zone. That's the fight, flight, freeze kind of response. So use one of these techniques to calm yourself down. So now you can again decide how you want to be in that moment.
So, with everything that you do, how do you maintain a positive mindset in the face of any setbacks or failure?
Well, I have my own daily process that I do. As far as meditation, I like to stay physical and work out. I am compassionate with myself. I know that I'm going to learn things. I have other people in my network that I can lean on as needed. I think that's important to have peers, colleagues that can be that support for you. So you find support, you find other people that are like-minded that can lift you up and encourage you. Not obviously you don't want to be surrounded by downer kind of people, but find the people that are going to lift you up and build those connections, build relationships.
What are some common emotional blocks that prevent people from achieving their goals?
A lot of things like not feeling like they're enough, feeling like you're an imposter, like you're going to be judged, feel like you're a failure or afraid of failure or even afraid of success. That can be a good one too. Sometimes we have certain beliefs about how successful that we can be. And if we start to become more successful than we believe we can be, we'll start to sabotage that success and essentially get in our own way. And those can show up in lots of different ways.
What do you think is the most overlooked factor when it comes to achieving success? Is it
I
more
think
so?
it's the mindset, the mind, like getting your mind in the right place. You can have all the strategies you want and again know exactly how to get where it is that you want to go. But if your mind is not in the right place, you'll do these things. You'll hold yourself back. You'll sabotage your own success. Do the things that are not going to help you win. So that mindset piece is really vital to being as successful as you can possibly be.
Okay. Um, so pretty much last question. What's your vision for the future, of hypnosis, and how do you see it evolving in over time?
It's pretty exciting right now. There's a lot of growth in the hypnosis and the mindset world. I'm personally excited in how these different types of modalities are coming together. I'm really interested in blending ancient wisdom ideas with modern neuroscience. I'm really interested in the utilization of psychedelics as a trance tool, as medicine, and how that can be impactful for people. I'm really just thoroughly interested in how we can utilize these tools to really master ourselves, to become our most highest version of ourself. And what are all of the different tools that can do that? Let's use them all. So rather than just kind of whether it's hypnosis or this modality or that, I'm really interested in bringing them all together and very interested in just trance as an idea, because you can use a wonderful feeling, a trance that just feels good. You don't have to direct it. It just by being in that kind of a state, you're going to heal to some degree. Just like with breath work, when you do breath work and you sit there for like an hour and you're doing this deep breathing, filling yourself with energy, you're not directing what that's going to heal. You let the breath work and the energy go where it needs to go and heal whatever needs to be healed. Same kind of idea when you're in a trance state. If you're just let yourself go into it, your body's going to start to heal. So I'm just really interested in how we can bring all of these different tools together in different ways. And I'm excited about the world becoming a better place as more of us wake up.
I like that. I like that. That should be the ultimate goal for anybody is making the world a better place, even if it's just one person at a time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but yeah, so Mr. Peters, definitely I want to take this time to thank you for coming on the show today, giving the audience insight on different ways that different techniques that they could do, on a daily basis to help them, kind of navigate through that a little bit. And then, everybody in the audience, you guys, if you feel like that he can help you, reach out to him. His information will be below in the show notes for the audio version and the description for the YouTube version. Reach out to him, let him know, what your situation is. I'm pretty sure he probably can help.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. And if any of your listeners want to experience, you can go to creativebreakthroughchallenge.com. And I've built out a kind of a free process to help people move past some kind of block that's getting in their life and stopping them from essentially living the way they want to live. So
Okay.
real powerful 7-step challenge that will break apart some one block in your life. Just eliminate it.
So everybody that's watching, like I said, go to the description and go show notes and go to his website and check it out. But you guys have just watched another episode of With All in All with Alex, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.